Hey y'all, this is your girl BMORE and welcome to the Dummies Cauldron. Hey, this is your girl BMORE and this is part 2 of the new moon in Scorpio video. Now the new moon has started on November 20th and we are forced to think about our own personal awakening, mysterious feelings, taboo events, shame, awakening the individuality in us all. How free are you? So all of these types of things and questions kind of all bubble up at the time, and it makes people, get all types of ways. So some people, they can see this as a way to be more troublemaking, manipulative, secrets coming out, but also some people are going to fight and stand firm in their own identity, their new identity. I know who I am now. I know what direction I want to take, and they're willing to get out on the mat and fight for it. So for part 2 in this reading, we'll be going over all the zodiac signs and how this new moon is going to impact them. So how to use the reading. This reading is set up in the tropical calculations. Do I use sidereal? Yes. But this is done for tropical. That's probably another conversation. I'm not going to segue off, but this is done for tropical. The other thing is this is done for sun, moon, and rising, so you can look through all of them. And if you don't know what your sun, moon, and rising is, you can put in your date of birth, time, and location of birth into a birth chart calculator. Make sure, like I said, tropical, set for tropical. It will give you the information you need, and then you can come back here and listen to your zodiac signs. Okay? Now, on to the reading. Okay. Hello, my Aries. So you guys are first, as always. And in this new moon, we are going to talk about a couple of things. One major thing about you, Aries, is that this new moon is going to deal with family funds, joint resources, spousal maintenance, taxes, debts, what your partner owns, whether it's like their income, property, inheritance, tax refunds, windfalls. I would tell you to avoid loans and only take out what you can afford to spend. If you can't afford it, then don't take it out. The other thing is more into the more psychological point of this transit. There may be a thing where maybe you have to manage other people's resources, other people's money. But there's also this other thing where maybe we have to think about our upbringing. Were we forced to conform to the ideas of what our parents wanted us to be? And can we live up to that without making major transformations in order to do that? I don't know. That is personally a question that you would have to think about. But that is something that does come up here. The other thing is getting, like I said, support and resources from other people's finances, maybe having to politic in certain places. Overall, you're a very private person, and you do understand that few people really understand who you are, especially since the transformative part kind of goes into this. So this probably is why there's like an over assertion of like who I am, my identity, me, not Scorpio, sorry, Aries, blah, blah, blah. I'm Aries, at this time period, and the over assertion, especially since you're also going through a Chiron in Aries. And so sometimes feeling like having to contemplate your identity. Did I change too much on the behest or the request of others? So that is something that you would probably have to examine. The other thing is, how did death transform you? Particularly in extra focused on this sign. Someone's death can really had a transformative kind of experience to you. It makes you really think about life, death, and pursuit of happiness, and being touched by someone from an external force, and their transition, and whether they inspired you to live more, or maybe even they triggered fear on the idea of death, and amongst other things. All of the litany kind of comes, but those are certain things that you can subconsciously question during this transit. The other thing that I feel like really comes up for Aries is there could be some issues of financial hangups, maybe even sexual hangups, and psychological hangups that, you know, maybe all of these experiences kind of forces us to examine what we were kind of going through, and also where the hangups actually are. I know sometimes people want to avoid the uncomfortable because it's uncomfortable, but if we get an opportunity to put into our face a clear point of what the issues are, it does give you an opportunity to accept or rework some of these uncomfortable truths, or give awareness to something. And whatever you do with that information, however you process that information, is entirely up to you, especially since Aries has to really work through actively processing at this time. We also see that sex, like I said, becomes a major commodity, and sometimes even somehow being wrapped up in work and professions. I'm not saying that you guys are, outside slinging body parts, but the idea of sexuality and sensuality maybe slides into the workforce. Maybe you end up finding someone attractive, however that may go. It can be a casual conversation at work about it. Who knows how this is going to articulate? It can even be a request from someone, I don't know. But that also comes into it because it's seen as a commodity. And then the last thing I'll say is, yes, we can deal with certain levels of inheritances, but really what I mostly see is that there is something where we have to get into our values, and they've definitely become clear where through this awakening, we understand what our values are, what we have, what we can bring to the table, and learn to stand on our own 2 feet by using what we have to work with. So sometimes realizing what our shortcomings are, that's a level of perspective. Shortcomings might not be so short if we realize what they actually mean, what kind of value they have, and what we can actually do with those experiences or material items. Sometimes things are only as valuable in the proximity of who sees it, who owns it, or in the proximity of ignorance. So it's easy to say something is worthless if we don't really know how much it is worth. That's why people go to appraisers. Aries, it's time for you to appraise some of your situations. Sometimes they are psychologically trying or hard events, but they do have worth, and they have built or metastasized. Accumulated is a better word. They have accumulated into something probably of value, but it forces you to awaken those your sense of values, your money, and what you have to bring to the table. And whether it's through other people's power or not, this is definitely an opportunity if we can get past the uncomfortable aspects. Good luck, Aries. Alrighty, next up is Taurus. So for Taurus, this is occurring in your 7th house, which deals with partners, desires, socializing, competition, because you may have some competitors come out and try to block you. To be honest, they try to block you, dash your plans, get in the way of what you're trying to do. You might have to do some negotiations if you have an open mind, and dealing with compromise, agreements, and cooperation at this time. Now, we may have to have some adjustments to the subconscious, to how much isolation we have, and maybe even sleep. I can definitely see that. Maybe even having limitations kind of come up, and it's a lot of frustrations kind of happen. But through all of those, in the same breath of those limitations and frustrations, we can tap into that inner strength. And that is very important at this time. How strong are you tapping into that force, that fire? Yes, limitations come and all this other stuff, but like Janet Jackson says, bad times don't last always. Or bad times don't last for long. It's been a while since I listened to that song, but they don't last for long, so dealing with all those limitations, frustrations, you gotta tap into those inner strength, and maybe this is a time where it can awaken that in you if we're open to the experience. I know Scorpio for some people is very intense, and most people don't like intensity. Again, a sign is a sign, and they all have their pros and cons, but I know why people don't like Scorpio, because it's one of the signs that push you on the liminal spaces of society. It's dealing with life, death, but very delicate situations that are also intense at the same time, and people don't like that. People don't like that. especially you, Taurus. I know you really wouldn't. But here we have to examine too in our relationships and trying to negotiate, people trying to tell us how to feel, what we think. And cooperation is important, but someone trying to force you into their perspective does need to be examined. So there needs to be a fine line between, I'm here to cooperate and work with you, but I'm also not here for you to tell me how to think and what to feel. And part of that is that at this time, you're very easy to talk to, easy to communicate with, which is fantastic. But at the same time, there's a thin line. We need some boundaries in these relationships that we are pursuing. The other thing is, I do understand because the sun in this situation is in Scorpio, and relationships are very important to you. They actually at this time give you a lot of security and stability. So like I said, there's the easy time for people to fall in with these relationship dynamics, whether they're platonic or not. And maybe even kowtow to these opinions, because the security of having someone with you could be very important. Now, also, because this is dealing with some hard aspects, this could end up in the long run awakening you to try to do everything by yourself. And although we're thrust into the public, there may be also some dynamics where you really crave for privacy, where you can do things and handle things alone and by yourself without necessarily being disturbed by people or the public. You need that time to just refresh your mind and being able to get back to the basics. Now, yes, like I said, it can work with the public, but also wanting to work with a partner is also a very important thing. So being very careful, be very detailed about how you're going to work with your partner, work with the public, kind of thing like that. Also seeing sometimes people making their relationship maybe part of their brand, or it somehow gets wrapped up into work, whether intentionally of like, you know, I'm going into business with my partner or in a relationship, whether it's platonic or not, or somehow it ends up impacting work as well. The last thing I say, although you're a people person and there's this constant need of praise or approval, sometimes if this isn't handled properly, there can be a lot of competition, a lot of arguments, and we need to learn a good way to integrate this. So sometimes sales is a good way, being a mediator, sometimes doing PR. You're genuinely liked, and you like people and they genuinely like you. At least that's how they feel. But yeah, I just being careful with this, because depending on how this is handled, because there is, like I said, that Uranus opposition, there is a strong chance that you can get so frustrated that we feel as though we don't want to be bothered with people anymore. I'm like completely done and burnt out. And that can also be too, like the constant need of external praise or the external attention, in combination with people trying to shove their opinions down your throat. So that is something to consider. You know, it's a bit tricky. But I do need you to be very careful, because yes, these relationships play an important role in your career, and dealing with them on a one-to-one basis, having these one-to-one conversations is very important, because it does give you power in this regard. But there is some challenges that kind of come along with that, about what you want versus what they want in these relationship dynamics, and it could just be very trying. So keep an open mind, but don't be a doormat. Okay, good luck, Taurus. For Geminis, my Geminis, this will be occurring in your 6th house. So this is a great time to apply to jobs, begin jobs, dealing with relationships at work. But I will be very careful, because those 6th and 12th house transits with relationships are very tricky. It starts off fine with a new moon in the 6th house, and then by the full moon in another sign, it's going to crap. It's really going to crap. Especially since, if I remember correctly, we're going to have a full moon in Gemini. So things start off really well, but we may have to examine relationships and find that they're not mutually supportive or mutually beneficial. So, and I'll do another video on the full moon in Gemini anyway, but things start off really well, but I think you should put up some guardrails, Gemini, with dealing with workplace relationships. This is a great time to exercise, tend to your health, pets, appliances, repairs, and your sense of service. We may have to deal with competitors, and we may have to deal with debt. Here, we may have to adjust our goals, adjust our earnings, and we may also have to make some adjustments to our friend groups, people we socialize with, hang out with. That's why I said, be careful with those work friends or workplace things. Hopefully we're not mingling too much and it's starting to get a bit inappropriate, but there may be some adjustments that we may have to make in this type of regard. I do see that we have to maybe consider that we may have to earn an additional living on top of the one that we see as a career. So, example, someone can sells books, but all books don't sell at the same rate. So a writer can have like one book that really knocks it out of the park, but then the next book, it really doesn't sell that well. So maybe they have to take up a managerial position. We may be in that situation where we may have to take up more than one profession, more than one job to kind of pay bills and make those inroads meet. There also, your values could really depend on what service you want to render. And so it's really important to you, your work ethic, being able to show up on time, being able to provide that service that you really want to. And some of these services can be centered around 6th house themes like health, hygiene, nutrition, etc. A lot of politicians or people who feel like they serve the community, because this is like a kind of thing. This also do with positions that do that. So someone makes you like a community leader, or you're in charge of this project at work, feeling like I was nominated for something, feeling that need to service people, take care of people at this time. The other thing is your day-to-day life can be very hectic and very busy. Maybe dealing with transportation, siblings, getting into their kind of nonsense, their drama, maybe working with them, dealing with travel, mail delivery, communications of all sorts, documents, test taking. The list goes on. It's a very busy time for Gemini. But this also can deal with boring people about talk around your job. People maybe not be interested. You can be like over talkative, and then you're trying to explain things about people's job, and it can be kind of boring to them. They're not interested, etc. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes with the misuse of these energies and also being too busy but not finding work that is necessarily gratifying and satisfying, we can see that some people can get a little bit ill, like I talked about later. And the work can be like on again, off again. You dabble in here, you dabble in there, and you never get the satisfaction. It's important at this time, Gemini, that you're satisfied with the work that you're doing. And because I notice a lot of times astrologically that when people do not get the satisfaction from work, it shows up as disease sometimes. And I'm not saying all of them shows up that way, because that's kind of what they say. This is different types of diseases, but there's a specific type of disease sometimes with the 6th house, with like poor habits, but a lack of satisfaction in the work that we're able to provide. So keep that in mind. The other few things I want to talk to you about, just a second. There is a strong desire to work or deal with children, or also your creative expression. So it's very important to you. Maybe you feel the need or the necessity to be able to express yourself properly at work. But like I said, those limitations come in, and it feels like someone's hindering me, someone's blocking me. I can't really work and pursue my goals how I need to, because the 11th house gives us goals and being able to pursue that. So we may have to adjust the goals that we have. I can also see too with this struggle trying to find a pleasurable way of work. And then sometimes we see that people don't even work at all, especially since this has some tension producing results. And for whatever reason, maybe you don't work because you don't feel well, whatever reason, it comes out and we're unable to express ourselves with work, which can be very frustrating and sometimes causes, for some people, how important that self-expression is. It can sometimes cause more illness and more upset for them. I also see too that there can be a thing where we can work so much that it probably prevents us from looking at things on a subconscious level and not taking in what is really going on. You know, there can also be a desire sometimes too is to, like I said, not work or just retire early or just work just enough just to pay the bills. And there's anything past that. You know, I would suggest you to try, if you kind of have all these ups and downs with work and all of this stuff and trying to pursue goals, please try to find some hobby that you can kind of express yourself. And the expression in work is very much so tied up right now with Gemini. It's very much so important that you're able to really get those feelings in that expression off, because it will keep a lot of the nonsense, the being hyper competitive, all of this other stuff, it will keep it down. You know, it's very, very, very difficult. And the last thing is there's a strong thing of trying to be kind of like a way paver, like finding a way, paving a way so that other people could possibly follow after you or use you as some type of ground. I guess I could say like a groundwork kind of goes on. The other thing is that there can be things where as we travel, we can travel and sometimes pick up bugs, cooties, or dealing with foreign things. So like we go travel, we're around people or places we're unfamiliar with, we can get sick. We're dealing with like law legislations. Sometimes the stress of that can make us sick. These types of things. Studying to the point we don't feel well. But nonetheless, all of those things attracts us. So I really would also suggest for Gemini just to take certain things to fortify their immune system, but also find that correct balance between being ambitious, having those goals, and being able to express yourselves, and where you have to make adjustments to get the job done. We may have to just try to figure out where we can adjust and get in where we can fit in. Okay. Good luck, my Geminis. Now for my Cancers. Cancers, this will be in the 5th house. And so this is all about kids, romance, sports, socializing, hobbies, creativity, investments, and just pleasure all around. So usually sexual pleasure, but pleasure nonetheless. We may have to adjust our careers and public status at this time because it can be a bit unfeasible, because, you know, we can't work all the time and then also want to, I guess you could say, party all the time, or have that pleasure. Something really would have to give in this moment. So here we see that there's a fun, loving, generous, and dramatic type of nature, a loving of arts, and really have a theatrical way, very like dramatic, really like coming in, stirring up all of this energy. What would it say, like a grand entrance? That could be a thing, but it does increase an adventurous, sports loving, and daring type of side. Children can play an important role at this time. And maybe you could be a person with just children really just gravitate to. Now, whether you have your own children or extended family, because we're going around Thanksgiving, so, you know. Now, you can also be a romantic, and so all of those things really appeal to you at this time. So that is one of the few things. The other thing is money and finances. And so here, a lot of people I noticed with some of these aspects, they either are dealing with acting or writing, but nonetheless, it's very important or the value of kind of like those types of things, valuing romance, valuing creativity. And so this is why writing can be very good, being attracted to social pleasures, and this can play a large role. So maybe it's very important that maybe you have to make adjustments for work, so that way maybe we can have those family get-togethers if you're interested, because it is the holiday season and we're midway through it. Or even just hosting your own situations. It's very important to you. Your social life is very important. So maybe making time for that. And sometimes the adjustment will have to be through, you know, work, career, people in authority, etc. You know, also earning money or finances through investments, speculation, that can also possibly be interest to you at this time. But again, very great for writing. So although love and romance is very important to you at this time, you know, you may not romanticize your partner in the way that you think you will. You know, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Also, home is very important. So you may take more of the pleasurable things into the home. So like doing spa treatments, beautifications, even like having children, like mentoring them at your home, or doing things like maybe you're a tutor, you go to people's houses and you help them. But although romance is important, it's weird because their Uranus is there. We may become less romanticized with these partnerships and the creativity altogether, which is very fascinating. And then the last thing I will say for Cancer is that this is a thing that really focuses on friendships, and you can love your friends, you can feel like you really support them, but you would like that reciprocation. And a lot of times, like I said, this is very sport focused, but also your goals can also align with entertainment. Your goals can sometimes align with children and socialization altogether. Maybe you can join like an adult league or something like that. That'd be really fun for Cancer. And the main thing that I really do, I feel like could also create some tension or contemplation here, is that there is a thing where it's very similar to Aries at this time, where we have to think about challenges to our finances. And this one lasts longer than Aries, so this is like doubly important for Cancer. Challenges to the finances, where we may have issues making money. There may be issues with psychological hangups or sexual hangups. Whatever the issue is or may be, it's very important that we kind of iron those out and figure them out, because it can make things a lot easier. And I do mostly see that this is the fun, daring, adventurous side. But I do know as these planets start to shift, we're going to start to feel them a little more. So like this is like a preemptive warning about those things. So if you feel at some point as time moves on like those types of issues, try to go see someone that you can talk to about it, or try to get to the bottom of those, because that's really where it's coming from. Okay. Good luck, Cancer. Alrighty, now for my Leos, this is occurring in your 4th house. So this deals with home, domestic matters, relocation, home improvements, parental responsibilities, moving, and overall the role of your family, the role in your family, the role of family, and dynamics with the mother. Now, we may be having to adjust our 9th house, our philosophies, our thoughts, even maybe adjusting legalities. What do we feel was real? What do we think was actually going to happen? Have my life experiences informed me of something completely and totally different? And that very may well be the case. So this is all around home, family, and all the trappings that kind of go with it. So in this situation, we may feel that we need a lot of time to ourselves and privacy. Being able to be at home and have our own space is very important to us. We also maybe feel like we need to become more of ourselves by leaving our homeland, which is a very interesting dynamic, because it's interesting dynamic because it's like a twofold thing where home and family are the focal point. So wherever we call home is the focal point, the homeland is the focal point, but we feel more like ourselves in things that will pull us away from society or where our norm of home is. And this can sometimes be materialized as away from our mothers and family, away from our homeland. But homeland is important. It's a very interesting thing. So again, this forces us to adjust our sense of values and what our philosophies on life is. This won't matriculate into you figuring out, but it will take some time though. It will take some time, Leo. But I find that very fascinating, that you kind of like going in between like home versus abroad, or home in things that are very foreign to the experience of maybe the upbringing. And this is a good time also to possibly get into writing, especially or anything that you can do inside the home. So sometimes people typing up manuscripts, writing books, stuff like that. You may also decide that you can really show your love for your country in some type of way. So this might come up as like some patriotism type of dynamic, or something where you could like show like the pride of your upbringing. I also see too connecting your career maybe with earth, land, or things like that. So sometimes I see like farming, archaeology, geology, real estate. How can I say? Yeah, and however that may be. Maybe it's just like you're incorporating more of those things into your work, or maybe you're going outside to work, or either working from home, because the fourth house deals with home, but it also deals with like literally the earth. So I can see that coming in. And then the second thing, I can also see maybe your parents somehow becomes more involved in work, or they become some type of enmeshment. I'm not really sure how that's going to play out entirely, but I can definitely see it. Now, the other thing I noticed too, in trying to deal with this kind of work, home, and parental thing, we may have had a sibling that act like a parental guardian or something like that, or a relative or a neighbor who could have done that. Or maybe your parent has like a child-like or sibling-like relationship with you. That could come up as a sidebar, especially since like the holidays are coming up, and so we're going to see most people are going to see their family. So again, being most comfortable at home in privacy and things you're used to, meeting with your family, and just traditions that you have in these celebrations, giving somehow overall a good line of communication. But I do see eventually, as things go on in these next couple of weeks, there could be maybe a lack of understanding with the parents. It gets more and more intense, where maybe they don't understand you. And this can be one or both of your parents, where they don't understand you. They don't get you. They don't really get where you're coming from. And that could be kind of upsetting. You know, that can be very upsetting. So, and the holidays are coming up, so like just try to take it easy. I know like there's like a thing where you kind of going in and out of like home, family. Do I want to be at home? Do I want to stick to the traditions, or do I want to kind of like phase out of that? Do I want to phase out of that? Do I want to like be more of myself away from these people? Especially since like eventually there'll probably be a misunderstanding, or people who don't really see you that clearly in some of these celebrations, get-togethers, although home is comfortable. And that's kind of frustrating. I could see the frustration of trying to like iron that out, because it's kind of like those classic movies with Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then the family starts to be annoying, and you want to be able to participate, but they're starting to be a little bit insufferable. You know, they're making it hard for you to participate in these type of celebrations. So the celebrations in the home put you on that fringe state. It puts you out on the border of society. It forces you kind of out, like what we talked about in part 1. The other thing is 4th and the 7th, there is a long transit that will be lasting for quite some time, where relationships and partnerships are very important, and they do give you a sense of security, but you do need your own privacy to kind of sort out your own feelings and how you feel, and just, I guess you could say, relax, you know. But really good luck, Leo, on those celebrations, and try to use this as a time for you to reevaluate your own personal philosophies about life and what do you actually value. And it'll bring these type of things up around home, family, and tradition, versus me going away and being in a whole different atmosphere. And that way I can unlock how I personally feel and be who I really am, or truly express yourself in the way that you want to. It'll definitely give you an opportunity to examine those beliefs and to see really where you fit in. All right. Good luck, Leo. Alrighty, now for my Virgos. So this new moon will be occurring in your 3rd house, and so this is going to deal with relatives, neighbors, acquaintances, community events, projects, high communication. So think calls, emails, mail, you name it. Running errands, taking tests, documents, sharing ideas, and practical knowledge. And how can you make knowledge, like I said, practical, everyday, mundane, etc. Now, we Virgos may have to adjust that 8th house. And so the 8th house is shared power, other people's resources, also obstacles, in forms of sexuality and money and finances. And so maybe we can't call on other people like we would like to. Maybe we don't get the help and the backup that we really thought we were going to get. That can be very, very trying at this time. That could be very difficult at this time, thinking we are going to get that backup that we thought we were going to get, and it just never comes. Okay. Now here we're going to have to communicate our innermost ideas. Maybe that comment comes out now, and needing a place to express yourself. This can come through writing, in other forms of communications, all the communications, but there needs to be a subconscious release of how you internally feel. So all that stuff you thought you were going to hold in kind of comes out. And this is kind of a big deal for Virgo, because Virgo, say what you want about them, but they aren't necessarily the most open signs. They're very secretive. I know they like to say Scorpio is secretive. I'm like, no, there's many more. There's many more in this zodiac that is secretive. And Virgos don't really like to say what the problem is. But I personally like this. I think sometimes, too many times, Virgos rely on hidden motives and or plotting versus just being outright confrontational in situations that it can really wrap up things very quickly. And I think this can be very beneficial. Just say how you feel. Just shoot straight with people and confront people. It'll actually wrap up a lot of that thing, whatever the drama is, very quickly. Whether it's good or bad thing, you can get the conclusion much quicker. Sometimes coming up with plans and all this moving things around, it doesn't necessarily get you the effect that you want. If someone hurts your feelings, most people are going to want an apology. If you want an opportunity, we want to hear yes. Sometimes it's better to just rip that band-aid off and just run right into there, just so we can get the results that we need. Now, not saying be stupid and foolish, no, but being direct and confrontational without the negative the connotation on it, because confrontational doesn't have to be good or bad. I can confront someone about, hey, I really like your shoes, or hey, do you think you will be able to do this for me? That's me confronting them. It's not necessarily out of a negative place. Now, I can also confront you and say, hey, were you running your mouth about me? Now, that is something negative. Now, this can give you really that opportunity, and I really enjoy this. Yeah. So we can get that one-to-one relationship situation. Now, I do see sometimes there is a desire to try to manipulate behind the scenes, do things without people really knowing, maybe unusual things, unusual ways of talking, unusual jokes, and maybe people might not always find that funny. So we have to keep that into consideration. There can also be secret involvements with people, running around, whatever. But the secret involvements always come to the forefront. And this is why I would really, really recommend Virgos. All that little sneaky stuff, this really isn't a time for it, because it kind of just comes out into the forefront anyway. So try confrontation. Try it on for size. And I know people were like, I never really peg Virgos for sneaky. I do, because I see how the chart's set up. I see it. So try direct confrontation on for size. Scheming, trying to move things behind the scenes, it's not necessarily going to work or pay off, because people can see you, and somehow it becomes public knowledge anyway. So why not really focus on communicating how you feel about saying how you feel about things and expressing yourself? You may get a result that you would prefer. You may not, but at the end of the day, you get a result from it. You get a conclusion. You can conclude whether somebody is good for you, someone is bad for you, whether I can make adjustments on something and quickly make a beeline to getting the results that I need, versus doing all of this roundabout stuff. It's kind of exhausting, actually. Now that I think about it, this sounds a bit exhausting. But the other thing is, this really centers around like your goals, your ambitions, and a lot of this can be wrapped up with your neighbors, relatives, schoolmates, and everyday acquaintances. So it really wrapped up around your friends. How do you feel about them? And most of the time you're on good terms with your siblings, but I do see like that Uranus tension pulling, that tension producing aspect. So we may have to see, are we really on good terms with people? Are we really on good terms with our siblings and neighbors and childhood friends and acquaintances, etc.? The aims can also be associated with travel, moving around, finding different ways to be successful. And sometimes that is, like I said, through travel. The other thing is being so ambitious and going after what we want, because it also sometimes involves travel or the idea of a journey, which is like movement, whether it's a physical movement or I guess you could say psychological movement, where we have to mentally travel off or like deeply go into certain things. Because it implies that so much, we may have situations where we're so deep in chasing our goals that we may find out that we're lonely and we're not as connected as we thought we were. And so that may also put a lot of this into examination. How important are your goals and your aims versus having that sense of community and connection? Have I overly prioritized me going after what I want, and I don't really have the relationships like that I would prefer at home or with the people that matter to me? That could be a thing. Now, a lot of this can really center on, like I said, writing, communication, also teaching. Sometimes it's easy for you to impart that knowledge onto other people, and whether it's like pens, books, and practical ways, getting practical knowledge. But you may find that you're also being informed as well. So that could be a thing. Like I try to teach someone and I end up learning too. This also makes you kind of almost like missionary like, where there's a strong need to communicate your beliefs, especially people in far off places or people you feel disconnected with. And so maybe you end up saying how you, like I said, you actually feel to people that you maybe lost connection with, or maybe you're literally just talking about what you believe in. So like, I say, hey, Amy, pass the mashed potatoes. And then you turn to me and say, let me tell you about Jesus Christ. And I'm like, oh, like we were having Thanksgiving right now. Yeah, kind of stuff like that. Sounds crazy, but there is a strong need to communicate your beliefs and say how you feel about things. So maybe externalize this as a writing or whatever, but sometimes these beliefs can also be, like I said, I worked very hard, or I did all this types of stuff and I'm really disconnected from people, and maybe having that heart to heart with them, like, hey, I would like to connect with you more. This can also be a great opportunity for those one-to-one conversations and those heart to hearts. Now, whether you're going to go and start manipulating and scheming, I don't know, child, but sometimes we should just take a win for a win. Like, this is a great opportunity. See, all right. The other thing is, and this is a long-term thing, sometimes people are kind of bored with the talk of work, also maybe working with siblings, and they also get kind of caught in your goals as well. We already talked about the travel aspect and getting into sports and competition, but that can also be a misuse of energies. And so because the work becomes weird and kind of on again, off again, there's some issues with not feeling satisfied in your work and not feeling satisfied in those aims anymore. And sometimes that can show up as disease, Now, outside of the communication, being important and sharing your ideas, I really would tell you to also focus on ways you can monetize you sharing those ideas, making income, a job or career that can involve that communication, those written, spoken words, politics. Relatives can also somehow be helpful to the earning capability. And so maybe if we try to shape it or force it that way, it can be a bit easier versus a bit much, because some of these placements can be very passionate and emotional, and it can kind of cause more drama and not necessarily the results that we want. So the most planning that I want you to do, Virgo, is think about ways that you can have your relatives, siblings, acquaintances, and neighbors, how they can also help you with monetary fields, like how they can help you with earnings, how communication can be wrapped into your earnings, and this can be anything. It's gonna be music, poetry, whatever. That's really important. So you do need to figure that out. Even if it's like, I interviewed my families and friends. Like, there's one book that I'm currently kind of like on again, off again reading, and it's just about this lady who just interviews a lot of different herbalists, whether they're in her family or herbalists that she travels around the country to find. They're like older people, and she just travels around her country and she's interviewing them about their experience. And that's a way that she's incorporated that communication into earning. But also she incorporated her own family. Like, they support her career, but they also are part of some of her interviews as well, about herbs that they've used and how long they've been using them, and her grandparents or like older people's experiences with the herbs and maybe even medicine, and what life was before they had the integration of like how hospitals and like the modern medical system is now, how it's so different from what it was then versus now, and what they had to do or how they were taught to use these types of plants, which is very much so different than, you know, I'm in pain, I'm gonna go pop a Advil. So, but that's a way that she's incorporating family, relatives, and neighbors into her written work or the communication. And like I said, overall communication is so important to you at this time. And so find ways that you can actually do those things without getting into arguments, boring people, getting wrapped up into people's drama, or even your own drama. You know, just try to shoot straight and make things as clear as possible, because you will be able to do this. All right. Good luck, Virgo. Alrighty, for my Libras, this will be occurring in your second house. And so this will be dealing with material values, financial stability and status, possessions, attitudes about money, an increase in earnings, gifts, ego. All of this stuff can center around debt and just budgeting in general. We may have to make adjustments to our partnerships, you know, whether it's like committed partnerships or like romantic or not. We may have to make adjustments here. So here, career is very important. We're able to make money or make a earning based off your career. Now, how much you're going to make really depends, because the moon is the signifier for a career of a Libra rising or a Libra person, but the moon is not strong in Scorpio. So it's kind of like it's a very interesting thing, you know, it gives mixed results. I think that's the best way of saying, because for Libra, the placement is in like how sign is strong, but the moon isn't happy in the sign. So what we get is a mixed result through earnings in the career. It's not that you can't, but you know, you earn some money and then something else happens, and then you spend money and then something good happens. Like I said, it gives mixed results. The other thing too is your earnings in socializing groups. You know, this maybe is a time where you feel like you want to go into business with friends or people that you're very comfortable with, or trying to earn money in organizations, or networking and socializing and trying to get, you know, just mingle and get money that way. Now, I also see sometimes people not working at all, especially since, like I said, this has a hard aspect to Uranus. So we can see like people just not working at all, and may end up being dependent on people sometimes they associate with or whatever to kind of get back on track or to cover these types of things. The other thing is you can be very easily influenced by external stimuli and peers. And we have to learn to develop our own value system, our own beliefs. And that too can also warp how much money you can make. Around this time period, it's very important that Libras figure out who they're around, how they make them feel, and how that can impact how much money they can make at this time period. Now, the interesting thing is that, you know, Venus is in Scorpio, and again, doesn't perform the best. So I'm giving this a mixed result as well. So there's a strong need to develop your own value system. You're choosing your own values that are right for you, and maybe disregarding convention. Like I said, that may go great or not. There is one tension producing aspect with Uranus, and Venus is the ruler of Taurus. So there's two things where I see like money could be made, but the sign is a bit wonky and the house is a bit wonky. And so when we get mixed strengths, like a planet prefers a certain house, but it doesn't like that zodiac sign, things can get a little up and down a bit flowing. It's not an easy flow. the planet then produces good and bad results simultaneously because it's happy and unhappy. So like you see things where like somebody can make a good living but they're depressed. That's a mixed result, because the planet, whatever that planet is for happiness and maybe sensuality and earnings, great, but I earned money but I'm still not happy. Or someone could be happy but then they're broke. This is what I'm talking about. Like it gives a mixed result. It's at the same time. So it gives you something you like and then something you don't at the same time. But yeah, so this is good for you making your own values, which can be great because some of the placements do give you a bit issues with peer pressure. But like I said before, these two planets don't always perform the best and in certain ways with earnings from career. And I actually see more so falling under peer pressure being the most strongest thing, and making sure we kind of stay the track of what our values are and what is important to us. And this is a strong financial or money motivated time at this period, and really what it stands for altogether. Now, most of this placement can be very easy to earn money, even though the planets give mixed results. So you can still easily earn money, or like it flows here to you. But I would tell you that because there is one tension producing results with Uranus, we have to always make sure we understand our values, what's important to us, and stay focused on that. And do not waste your talent, whatever that talent may be. So if it's personality, you need to figure that out. You know, if it's some type of athleticism, you need to figure it out. If it's a people person, you need to figure that. We have to make sure we stay very focused. If you need to write down on a piece of paper the values, so what's important to me with home and family, what's important to me with health, what's important to me with spirituality, whatever religion or whatever you practice, what's important to me, you know, with personal development. You need to find that, whatever that is, and if you don't know, you need to start working on that and stay focused on that, and then sit down and figure out what talents do you actually have. So like most of the time when I have clients and they come in and they say, oh, I'm broke, I don't have this, I don't have that, none of this is working out for me. Yeah, I feel you, boo. Just tell me some of this stuff. What are you good at? Like, what type of stuff can you do? Yeah, I can braid hair. I know how to paint a car. Like, I actually worked at like an auto shop. I can cut grass. You know, actually, I can dance really good. You know, I can sing. You know, I actually went to school for dancing or for theater. Okay, baby, you're not broke. You're underutilized. Because now you have, if you're naming me all these resources that you can do, and it might seem mundane to you, but someone would want to pay for those resources or that. So like, you're not broke. You're underutilized. You're underutilizing your own resources because you went through an experience and you learned how to do a technique, and you're not monetizing any of it. Why not? Gotta figure it out. So that would be the main thing I would tell Libra. The second thing is with that whole 8th and the 2nd, it can be very easy to get the support, not only with words, but also people financially backing you. Now, there could be, for some people, let me say this, please slow your roll, because some people can be very indulgent, and so they can indulge in like sex and all this other stuff and spending. Really try to take it easy, but it can be very easy for you to get the backing and the support that you need. All right, but don't try to really overdo it, because you already have a couple planets that give you mixed results. So get the support when you can get it, but like chill out of it, you know. And then the other thing is, you do have a long-standing planets where creativity, children, and romance, all that is important to you, and you want to live a lifestyle that way. But there can be a bit of a drama and a bit of a tension producing aspect. So I really like, if you're going like in the relationship aspect with this, or dealing with things with sexuality, just really try not to be too messy. And this would be good for creative writing, dealing with things with children. So like if you write a children's book, you know, whatever, that's cool. But Libras, try not to be too messy, because your mixed result planets and what's all wrapped up in here, I actually can see y'all getting into trouble, because it's not like easy or it's like a real breeze, because Venus is your planet, is like the ruler of who you are, and it's in Scorpio. So I can see this is kind of going it can get messy. So like, be smart, right? You know, have some sense about you. And so when you get this, when you start moving things around, like, you know, because like I said, mixed results. So you don't want to be too sloppy, and then you getting more bad than the good in the mixing of the results. So good luck, Libra. Alrighty, now for my Scorpios. Now, if you remember, I did talk about how, what is it, the last cycle? I think it was the last cycle. So the last cycle before this, or I guess you could say the new moon in the 12th house. That's to be a better way to say it. The new moons that are in the 12th house always should be examined about what's been going on in the past, maybe like six or so months. And that's me being generous, but it should be examined, because when we have new moons in the first house, like this one is right now, this can kind of bring things to the surface, and some type of information comes to us, comes through the energy field. For some people, it's through their dreams, because the 12th house is dreams, but sometimes it's like outright secrets. Sometimes it's hidden talents, subconscious, long buried thoughts. But the truth comes out no matter where the truth wants to come out from, whether it's the dream realm or the physical. So for here, this appears in your first house, and so there can be an emphasis on change of appearance, habits, new endeavors, hobbies, exercise, popularity. And this is an overall good time to evaluate your strengths and weakness. Now here, you may have to adjust your sixth house, or where you have Aries would be the sixth house. So daily routines, tasks, health, work, you know, exercise habits. We may have to adjust those types of things, because we see that maybe we aren't able to work or do things that in a way that we think we do. And maybe we're also evaluating or reevaluating our values or what's important. We can also be a poor judge of character at this time. So I will also tell Scorpio to take it easy. Sometimes we don't see things very clearly, and so we need to take a beat and try to internalize and meditate to see where we're kind of going with certain things. And although we're a dreamer and we're very much so interested in religion, philosophy, and how we personally feel about, I guess you could say, feel about life and these ideas, this could be a good time maybe to either challenge those ideas through teaching and education, and either like meeting with people or through religious institutions, you know, maybe even excelling too at sports. This can be a thing where people could be very attracted to sports at this time, or legal professions, you know. So that's a possibility, you know. Maybe having some law kind of comes into this. How well you're going to do with the law depends, because if too many hard aspects come, sometimes people can be a bit law breaking, and they start getting a bit ghetto. The other thing is, we really want to achieve a lot in our career, and whatever we do, we want to do it ourselves. We don't want to take the easy way out, or what we perceive as the easy way out. We want to, you know, get things out of the mud. The only thing I would say about that is that sometimes that's not always the wisest way or the smartest way. Now, will it make us feel egotistically satisfied? I think that's how you would word it. Yeah, it would, but it doesn't always mean it's the smartest way, you know, because we don't want to get things from that. We want to say that I did this, I did it by myself, blah, 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 but that's not always the wisest way. And so we may have to reevaluate that. And part of that sixth house reevaluation is that competitive edge. Everything doesn't need to be a competition. It doesn't also need to be so individualistic. That's something that we can call in or question as well. Now, there's also a time period where we can take a look within and start to be more introspective. Now, whether you're going to be introspective and actually evaluate your behaviors and have more reflection, that's subjective, but you do feel the pull of it nonetheless. Now, the other thing is, you can identify very strongly with your partner and the public. And so there is something where, how can I say this? I don't know. Normally would be kind of like self-directed, but there's more of I guess you could say more of a focus on relationships and other people. It usually would be that way, but because I see Venus kind of wrapped in it, it really kind of moves more towards less of an individualistic type of way. But you do identify very strongly with your partners at this time period, and that's kind of a push and pull. You identify strongly with them, but this is a first house thing about centering yourself and what is important to you at this time. So something does have to give. There's going to have to be some compromise, but the compromise, it has to be talked about. Everything can't be about you, especially since your counterpart is Taurus, and Taurus has the Taurian aspect that you're interacting with that would represent the other person or your partners. They can't make all the concessions. You can't overly try to make them overly identify with your thoughts and feelings, etc. And home is important too. So I would tell you to clean your home, organize your home, and deal with any dynamics with family and loved ones. But yeah, make sure you have some time in the corner and a space to recharge and be at home. And your main thing, you're going to be fine, because the first house new moon is pretty cool for everyone who has that in their first house. But try not to be a little bit overbearing and troublemaking and fussy. Something has to give. Something has to give. Too indulgent. You know, you already got the new moon working for you, babes. You gotta break some of this up, Scorpio. You know, you can't have everybody kowtow down to you, and you know, I want to drive the bus and be in charge, and it's just take it down a notch, just a smidgen, and try to be open-minded, especially you, because this is in your sign, you know. So good luck, Scorpio. Sagittarius. So for my Sagittarius, this will be occurring in your 12th house, and so confidential information is usually communicated. Now, whether this is your confidential information or someone else is telling somebody else's business, nonetheless it will be communicated. So use this time to review the past 6 months to really prepare for the new moon in Sag, which will be occurring next month towards the end. Now, the other thing is, usually this means that someone that you know can be in a hospital, institution, or etc. And so we can kind of see that kind of bubble up too. So institution can be like jail, psychiatric facility, religious facility, whatever, but someone will be in it. Now, we also see that the hidden side, your intuition, suppressed desires and talents start to bubble up and emerge at this time. Now, because Aries is 5 signs away from Scorpio, in the 5th house we may have to adjust our pleasure, our socializing urge, dynamics with children, lovers, and possibly even sex and sexuality. We may have to adjust these types of things, and we may have to just be okay with it. We can't always do everything we want. Maybe we could feel less romantic and more competitive at this time. Possibility. There is an urge to somehow communicate your subconscious thoughts out to people and have these one-to-one relationships or one-to-one conversations. Maybe a positive idea, because it can also get all these subconscious thoughts and desires off of our chest and out into the public, or out to the people that it needs to be had with, better yet. Now, we also see a lot of your aims and goals have to do with medicine, medical research, operating behind the scenes. So sometimes you see writers, directors, you know, people who they're working, but you don't necessarily see them overtly. I would say also really important that, you know, the aims can sometimes do with group dynamics, or group dynamics doing things that require inner strength or tackling limitations. But I will say, you do need to choose your friends carefully, because there can be someone who could prove deceitful and envious. So keep an eye on that, you know. And you may need some time to recharge or just recenter just in general, which is not necessarily like a bad thing, but I would watch who you socialize with. This can be quite the rocky time for my Saggies out here. Maybe dealing with a lot of ghetto people, or people who are malicious, they're not who they say they are, etc. So this could be a good time to review who you're keeping around. But also, like I said, nonetheless, the secret will come out anyway. So if this is about people who are treacherous, probably by next month, we'll see that the information kind of like bubbles out anyway. And I'm gonna be very honest about that. The other thing is a lot of your philosophy and your personal own views of life, they're built on your own strength and your own convictions. And you really don't want outside influences to shape your beliefs, you know, and this can be expressed in like writing and all types of ways, research, medicine, science, you name it. But you really don't want people to shape those types of things. Your belief system or religious experiences or whatever is very important to you. The other thing is sometimes I do see people who they're trying to shape their belief systems and their views, but maybe they experience doubts about their own perceptions and their beliefs and how they really feel about their emotions and spiritual attitudes. So they may even go to like a therapist, a shrink, or someone who can help them, you know, figure out what their ideas actually are, you know. So yeah, like I said, this would be great for studying, a seeker, and someone who always seeks knowledge. And you may have to end up seeking knowledge about yourself. You may need to go out and get that information about who you are, what you think, etc. Now, I do see this also having a hard time of sharing those sensitive or subconscious thoughts, and you don't like really being too vulnerable at this time. I also see too having a lot of affairs or secret things going on. But like I said before, you do have a placement where secrets come out anyway. So you and Virgo have this very much so in common, where you try to be secretive, but it don't really work out how you think it is. I can also see too much emphasis put on sex, and sometimes this can bring more problems to you than you would prefer. But your feelings are very deep though. You know, so there can be change that takes place, but this might take some time to be able to do that, and really trying to also have a fear of death or like a fear of like things ending. And maybe you need to get to the subconscious thoughts of those as well. Also, other people's resources are available to you, and maybe you don't know what's available to you as a source of help and resource, or maybe you just don't want other people to know your business, which I kind of get. But like I said, some secrets don't last for long, and you're going to see why they don't last for long, because they kind of just bubble up, and then you find out like who was saying who was doing who, and what was going what, you know. You know, the last thing I said, what I will say is there's something where you're a very hard worker and you can take on more than you should. Sometimes you end up getting sick, and then instead of having boundaries, you get so sick, you have to go lay down, then you get better, and then, you know, you get sick again. I would tell you to be mindful of that, because you don't want to end up having a chronic disease. So put some boundaries up with work, services, or people asking for help, you know. This also could be a good time to work in seclusion. You know, that also can avoid a lot of nonsense. But also this can mean that you have a lot of hidden strengths or unknown strengths. So I really would tell you to take some time to do some self-research, you know, figure out who you are, figure out what's kind of going on with you, and possibly even explore counseling, or, you know, there's even like self-help books or books that psychiatrists write, where they kind of go through the exercises, and then you learn the skills that they have in the book. And so that way you can cultivate those behavioral skills if that works for you. And the only reason why I suggest it, because you have a strong indicator of writing and books and research anyway. If you had other placements, I would not suggest this. I try not to suggest things to people where they either have poor concentration, the research, they won't do much research or none of that, because it don't matter. They not going to do it. They're not going to do it. But that's what I would really suggest for you, Sagittarius. Now, good luck, Sag. Now to my Capricorns. Now, my Capricorns, this will be occurring in your 11th house. And so this is a much lighter month, dealing with friends, networking, groups, teamwork, humanitarianism, and long and short-term goals. We may have to adjust dynamics with our mothers, our family, and our friends at this time, and home life in general. May have to make some tweaks to that in order to make those dreams come true. Now, this is very interesting. Now you have very supportive friends. They're very down with you. You may have to get into like politics, dealing with hosting or entertaining people. It's come very naturally. You can also be very good with interacting with like children and younger people, but I can definitely see that maybe there's something with the identity and trying to figure out like this dynamic between the socializing and being able to use your social graces and just outright being a loner, or feeling like maybe you need to do extra stuff in order to get this love or support. You know, I can definitely see this as possibly being a problem, and you don't need to do that. You know, this is supposed to be a lighter month and deals with socializing. You're gonna have to like make some inroads to address those types of things. You don't need to do all of this stuff to get people to like you. You're already kind of like a social butterfly in this moment right now, so don't try so hard, Capricorn. The other thing, you do require friendship from your partnerships, whether they're romantic or not. You want that give and take in your partnership. You may be attracting to people with children, or like this motherly or parental energy or fatherly energy. You find it very attractive, so I can see you being like that. But again, the loner thing kind of gets in, and then you don't want to be tied down, and so this can kind of create like this push and pull between the desire to socialize and then the desire to kind of like be off by yourself. Now, friends can give you a lot of support, and they even can give you resources to like back you up at this time. Whether you'll take them, whether you, like I said, you keep doing this loner thing, even though this is supposed to be a lighter month for you, and kind of like edging towards intensity. Also, many of your feelings are goal oriented, so you don't really, when you do socialize, it's not really necessarily for the pleasure or doing activities for the pleasure. It's to accomplish a goal. So like you do research, like for instance, like you're doing astrology, and it's just to accomplish a goal. It's just to get whatever you're trying to do done and to fulfill an ambition. It's not necessarily because you enjoy it. And then your sexual attitudes can kind of loop into this as well. And so how you perform is really dependent on how much you feel loved or needed. In this case, the desire to feel maybe special can kind of also be roped into this type of thing. So very fascinating, because you already had placements before where it was a bit more relaxed than this, but like I said, Scorpio is very intense. So, and I mean relaxed in like relationships and sexuality, because it kind of went like a little crazy a few months ago. Then it was like, we're committed, and now we're back to like, I'm alone. It's very interesting, but that really matters. And then you can make a lot of career inroads in your social standing, dealing with groups and organizations. So think like congressmen and senators, they make a lot of inroads by networking and socializing with one another. Think kind of something like that. But the friends play an important role in your professional life and groups of people and networking, you know. So you can end up working with a friend, and they might back you, they might support you to get you over the hump or get you somewhere. But that loner thing is kind of making it a bit difficult. It makes it difficult at this time. And I do notice that Capricorns tend to have very wild and very much so intense mothers. So I do notice sometimes they struggle with having like peace at home, because it's really rooted in like a childhood experience with very aggressive adults or parental figures. Now I do see like the main thing too where the adjustment is yeah, you can go into business with your friends. You can earn through large organizations or like groups of people. But you really do need to work on your value system, because this really is impacted by people you socialize with. And so you can be easily influenced at this time. So although you're avoiding people and there's like a gap in the socializing, depending on how strong you are in your backbone with your own personal values, this may or may not be a good thing. I think for Capricorn, yes, there's a lot of opportunity to be had with interacting with people and socializing. But if your values and your self-esteem isn't really fortified, and you kind of know who you are, what your limits are, what you're coming in here to do, blah, 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 you know, your self-esteem, self-worth isn't like really like tight, you really could be swayed by other people to think how they think, view things how they view. And that can often get people in trouble. Like people who lack direction or values, they end up not having the resources they want. They're not directed or focused enough. And also sometimes you could just get in trouble because you're just agreeing with what people saying. You're not actually checking or clocking people's intentions or what the heck the end result of all of this will be. You're not doing enough research. So keep that in mind. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that's pretty much it. But good luck, Capricorn. I know you kind of like in your emo, I don't want to talk to nobody kind of phase, but you may have to do a little bit of adjustments to see what you're going to do with this energy. Okay. Good luck. Now for my Aquariuses. So this will be in your 10th house. And so this is all about having an advancement in the world, the career status, promotion, praise, honors, recognition, maybe even having contacts with the government or parents, or maybe you're like kind of called in to like be a parent, etc. Now here, Aries will be in the 3rd. So we may have to adjust our speech. We may have to adjust the things that we say, calming communication. Make sure you have all the paperwork, all the facts that you have. There can be disruptions in what people say in calls and getting that information, and maybe having to travel or move around a lot. So make sure the details are finely ironed out. Now, right now, the career is very important, and you may feel like you want to do everything by yourself. You want to, you know, kind of say like, I did this. You don't really want to take the easy way out, but sometimes us doing things the quote unquote hard way isn't always the best way. And sometimes we can overwork ourselves, and sometimes make more drama and mess than just properly working efficiently. And so even if someone does help you and put you in the right direction, it just won't be ego satisfying, because you want to have that moment of like, I did it, I pulled myself out the mud, I want this attention. That may or may not be off-putting, but it also may not be beneficial all the time to do everything yourself. But you still want the status. And a lot of your career can involve foreign travels, legislation, law, dealing with foreigners, etc., higher education. We can also see too that this can also sometimes for people dealing with space or certain forms of science. They also could possibly be successful careers and possibly wanting to teach people or show people in ways that you've been successful and try to inform them how to be successful. But we also see sports is important, and entertainment and philosophy, and how your philosophy can impact structures at work or impact people in positions of power. And so you want to take your life experience, your views into, I guess you could say, into some of your work that you do, and mix those into, I guess you could say, the work structure. And when people talk about the values of work, what is the work culture like, you kind of want to make your own work culture, your own philosophies and stuff like that, and kind of tie it to your career, your status, etc. And we can also see this play out in politics and government. Now, you do have the potential for public recognition, like I said, entertainment, politics, art, anything where you can just make yourself heard or seen. And because career recognition is important, you're going to be outside really getting it. So this also shows up as a partner being helpful. Particularly, they help you, they push you ahead, they promote you, they get you kind of like set up, they want you to keep accomplishing. And also, this also means that relationships and partnerships are very important. You maybe want them to succeed. You're on the quest to have a strong or successful merger, even if it's just business, or even if it's, you know, literally your relationship. It's very important to you that it's a success. Now, the other thing is your work can kind of become your career. So the daily routines and tasks that you take on really help to shape you stepping into your career. So if you don't really want to do certain things, or you do want to do certain things as it shapes into your career, I would kind of use this time, Aquarius, to start doing routines and tasks that can kind of put you into your career field. Now, the other thing is, we can also see that this shows up as a parent wants us to work harder than we actually want to perform a service. And maybe they even want you to perform a service for free. Like, can you help Miss Martha take her couch down the steps? And it's like, I actually run a moving service. Like, you know, that should have been consulted with me if I'm going to do free or pro bono work for Miss Martha, not you having me work for free. And I don't know who these people are, making schedules that I don't know what's going on, type of stuff like that. Now, the good thing is, this does give you the feeling or the vibe of being a leader, tapping into that potential, the desire to succeed, wanting to shape in and refine your workmanship and climb up that ladder, which is really, really great. You know, so you can use this time to really rework those things so you can actually have that achievement, that public achievement, whether it's the career, work, whatever you're working hard to do. I'll also tell you to pay attention to gossip, which you're probably going to do anyway. And you're seeing what people say about you. Now, sometimes I see with these placements, either that people are paying attention to what people say about them and then kind of tweaking, or they listen to what people say about them and then do the complete and total opposite. Like, they just want to be different and like defy, I guess you could say, the convention, or what, like the idea that people have about them. Now, the last thing is, usually this is an indicator like parents are very important, or there's like a traditional home or traditional lifestyle, or maybe like an authoritative parent that can be very heavy-handed. I can also see this as like a rebelling against authority, not wanting to listen to authority figures as well, because sometimes that parents being too harsh, and you see it in a chart, and then they end up just rebelling anyway, and unrealistically harsh too. You know, I definitely can see that. Also, I can see this as a parent or parents being influential in your life or influential in your career. Maybe they want to do something that wants to help push you into your career, push you more deeper into like that 10th house life. I can see them doing that. I do see examples too of people who prefer staying at home to a career. They really just want to chill. They maybe do some occasional things to earn a living, but they really don't want to be out there because they don't want to face criticism or the privacy of their four walls. They're more outgoing at home and more assertive than being out in the public. Although there's a desire to, like I said, be seen publicly. But it's very interesting. You want the recognition, but for some people that don't fall in line with like the parents being in charge, the parents helping them with their career, for a sliver of the Aquarian people, they may not be as outgoing in the public as they are at home, or they just may prefer to work at home or only make so much money just to live a good, comfortable lifestyle or whatever is comfortable for them. And then just go home and just, I don't know, make dinner and chill with their families and friends or whatever. But that is pretty much it, Aquarius. Good luck. Most of this stuff is going to center around work and career and how you feel about it. The most push and pull you're going to have is watching your mouth and making sure those daily routines and tasks are done. This could be a little bit of a busy time for you. And trying to figure out if you really want that career, or do you just want to make just enough money to live comfortably and go sit at home, you know? Good luck, Aquarius. Last but not least, my Pisces. So today, Pisces, this new moon will be occurring in your ninth house. So we'll deal with the future, long-term plans, hearing from people from far off places, travel, different cultures, maybe things around your father, teaching, college, maybe in-laws and legal matters like jury duty, maybe judgment, the husband, the spouse, and overall just challenging your ethics and philosophies and what is the truth and what is actually knowledge. Now we may have to adjust the Aries in the second house, so finances, values, what we feel like is important, what we actually value. We may have to adjust those. Are we a good judge of character? That's another one. So here we may see that a lot of our personal philosophies really are built on our own inner feelings and strength and convictions, and for some people they may need help to sort those out. So I do see people maybe going to therapy, etc., to kind of sort out their own thoughts and philosophies. But there's also people who are interested in spirituality, religion, and possibly like things like folklore. It'd be very fun or fascinating for the Pisces to maybe read certain things on those type of topics. I also say the Sagittarius too. They too can probably get in and all that too. But what is the truth? So you may be fascinated with those types of themes. Now, there's a certain ideal and optimism that kind of pervades your attitudes, and this can even go into like religion, occultism, sexuality, debt, and taxes, and also how the higher mind and how your spirituality really helps to shape an important role of transforming you and helping you to move in transcend certain things. Now, I do see that some of these difficult aspects can show up as maybe some issues in classes for people who are in school, maybe a lack of financial backing, maybe times we're too overly optimistic and not enough foundation and proper planning. All of these things can kind of show up at this time. Now, this is also a good time for like globetrotting, traveling, really want to be a waymaker, finding your own course and showing people also how to set the course for themselves as well. Like this can show up as like teaching, but sometimes just laying the groundwork for people. I also see this too as people getting ill and sick as well. Like sometimes with that 6th, 9th, people travel, they get sick, people do much for, it's kind of weird to say this, but like illness and sickness being tied to like, I guess either out of body experiences or travel. So like you go to church and you get sick, things like that. But there's definitely a need. I will actually tell you to really work on boosting your immunity. This will be a great time to do that. So maybe take some supplements like vitamin C and try to eat really like a chill diet for right now. I know Thanksgiving like really around the corner, so but give it a try. The other thing is there's a strong desire to travel for pleasure, also a strong desire for creative literature, and also a thing for teaching. Sometimes it's teaching children or being surrounded by children. But anyway, learning is fun for you at this time and you really truly enjoy it. So this will be very fun for you. There's also going to be an indicator of attraction to sports. So I often see that being a thing, or forms of competition can also be very fun or seem attractive at this time. The other thing is your imagination really doesn't have any barriers. So you can come up with new ideas, new impressions. You can give your dreams practical expression. This is also an indicator for a writer, really like fantasy writer, if I'm being very specific. It's good for writing fantasy, but really an imaginative person. Also, travel also kind of forces you to deal with philosophy and religion. Also, maybe dealing with foreign languages, foreign people, and this kind of triggers more of the religious and philosophical part of yourself in that side. There also may be separation from relatives or people close because you're really not tied down at this time. You're just moving from one thing to the next, and so we may just lose contact with family members and different people like that because we're just doing our own thing. Also, religion may play an important role in education, so we may be able to like incorporate or mix those things together. Now, if we're not careful, we can see an improper use of the energy where we don't move forward. You know, there's no proper momentum moving, and it's hard for us to fulfill our dreams and to accomplish these types of things. Overall, seems like a pretty fun and enjoyable time. I would tell, like I said, Pisces, to take care of your health though. Make sure you're eating properly, making sure you're hydrated, and you know, making sure you're getting that proper nutrition. But this seems like a very fun time to study, get into like all of your ideas, and learn about the world at large, and see how that shapes your, like I said, the truth, ethics, and your knowledge overall. Good luck, Pisces. Okay, guys, so this is the end of the reading portion. It was definitely truly a pleasure talking to you. You know, hopefully you guys can be safe and enjoy your holidays. The remaining thing that I will be doing next is talking about the outer planets and our last time of karma with these outer planets, and what we should do or how we should handle this last little go round. You know, what do you do when a planet retrogrades back into a sign one last time? You know, this is our last time to really deal with those karmas, and we will not have to deal with them anymore, for better or for worse. Okay, happy holidays, guys, and good luck. Bye.